Good afternoon, class. My name is Randy, and today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about the Second Amendment, which reads, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Now, this amendment has had a lot of controversy over the years. There's both pro-gun and anti-gun lobbyists everywhere that are trying to either keep the amendment stricter or sometimes eliminate it and be more regulating on weapons. Um, for those who are anti-gun, a lot of them think that the word militia has a significance in that it applies only to military personnel or peace officers of the peace, things like that, police officers. The proponents, of course, have the opposite view that the right to bear arms is an essential right that all Americans have in order to be able to defend yourself against anyone who wants to harm you or even the government trying to become tyrannical. And the part of the original spirit of this amendment was from that very idea that we can protect ourselves from government tyranny if we have the ability to arm ourselves. And disarming a population, of course, in many views, could lead to the government being able to take over, being ruled over by despots and tyrants. So as far as the word militia, it could mean an individual who is actually able-bodied enough to join a military branch or be able to defend themselves or their country when the need arises. So it's not necessarily a part of a militia group. So there's been a couple of recent Second Amendment Supreme Court cases. The first one is going to be the District of Columbia versus Heller. And in this particular case, the District of Columbia disallowed the use of handguns in homes for private use unless they were disassembled, had a trigger lock, and other kinds of safety measures. Now, this went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided that those kind of regulations would be unconstitutional because they would take away a person's ability to defend themselves, which is the spirit of the Second Amendment. The second one, more recently in 2008, was McDonald versus Chicago. I personally remember seeing this unfold when I was stationed in Great Lakes, which is about 40 miles from Chicago. A lot of us watched it and paid attention to what was going on. So this case, Chicago, much like D.C., had very strict handgun rules within the city limits, and a lot of people weren't allowed to carry weapons within the city. Again, this went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided that that was also unconstitutional. That the 14th Amendment covered the Second Amendment in this case under the Due Process Clause. So the Second Amendment applied not only to federal, which was the D.C. case, but also to the states. So therefore, we could have the states were not allowed to make laws that were unconstitutional for its citizens under that clause. I think what was equally important about that was that the court found that the right to bear arms for the purposes of self-defense was a deep-rooted and fundamental right that we all had. And now getting a little bit off topic, with the recent school shootings that we have, the Second Amendment has been a lot more of a question. There's been a lot more debate now as to whether someone's right to bear arms is more important than the rights of children in schools and things of that nature. Unfortunately, it's not a question that's going to be easily solved, and especially not in this form that we have right now. So the question is, how do we make schools safe, and how do we keep our rights? Because that's just as important. So the Second Amendment, the right to possess firearms for protection of families and for ourselves, unfortunately can be used for nefarious purposes by those who want to purchase weapons and buy them for doing terrible things. So at some point, the debate's going to have to come back, and it's going to be resolved what extent we want our rights to be and how much we're willing to give up to protect the kids. Nevertheless, despite that, it's a very important part of our identity, the right to bear arms. It's very unique to this country, and it gives us the right to feel safe in our homes and free from being attacked by the government or the rise of tyranny or things of that nature.